Recently, after the increase in petrol pump price from around 600 naira to about 900 naira, depending on the location, Nigeria Labour Congress and its president, Comrade Joe Ajaero, alleged that the federal government, particularly the president, betrayed labor over the petrol pump price increase. According to the Nigerian Labour Congress, there was an agreement that there will be no such increment during the last negotiation between it and the federal government over the minimum wage. NLC further stated that it only accepted the 70,000 naira minimum wage because of this understanding there will be no fuel hike in the immediate future. However, according to some Nigerian critics, no agreement between the federal government and the NLC was reached concerning the recent fuel increment. They insist that if there was an agreement, the NLC should provide the evidence. Joining us now on this show to review the NLC's allegations is Dr. Ahmed Ibrahim Sajoh, Executive Director, CEO of the Future Now Initiative, former Adamawa State Commissioner for Information and Strategy, and member of the Association of Communication Scholars and Practitioners of Nigeria. Good morning, Dr. Sajoh, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, sir, my brother Ruben. Good morning, my brother, my sister. Good morning to you all.
Morning. Well, thank you for joining us quickly. Organized labor is saying that the Nigerian government lied to labor during the negotiations. That the Nigerian government said 70,000 naira minimum wage will be agreed upon, not 250,000 naira that labor wanted, because according to Comrade Joe Ajaero, the federal government said it will not increase fuel price. And now here we are this morning. Fuel price is being sold in some parts of Nigeria for over 1,000 naira. And labor says it's been betrayed. Some people are saying that by October 1, labor will have no option but to call out the troops again and to demand a reversal of the fuel price hike that Nigerians have witnessed. Social costs as a result of this fuel price hike, inflationary pressure. What do you think government should do? What do you think Labour Congress should do? What's your view?
Yeah, okay, number one, let me start from the concept of betrayal. I think it's a wrong word to use in industrial relations. I believe that industrial relations demands that when workers' representatives and their employers hold negotiations, not discussions, but negotiations, the end results would be a signed agreement. At times, not only the representative of the workers and the employers that signed, if there is an arbitrator involved or some witnesses, they also sign. And that agreement is supposed to be made public, not just when there's a dispute, but even at the end of the negotiations, when they come out of the negotiations and they enter an agreement and there is an agreement, that agreement should be made public to everybody. To the extent that we did not see an agreement in the public space, signed agreement in the public space, indicates that Labour was not also very diligent in the manner they pursued the negotiations. And I also want to say that, attacking the president of the country but saying he betrayed them, and I think it's a little bit wrong, or if not totally wrong, because the presidency is an office. That office, regardless of who occupies it, must be respected. And then I believe very sincerely that as it is, since the downstream sector of the oil economy had been deregulated, I think it would be a little bit difficult to put a cap. A reason is that oil is an international commodity. You cannot decide to say, look, this is the cap we're putting on a system that we accept has been deregulated. I think that is where the argument should have even started. Why did we deregulate the downstream sector? But if we accept that it's deregulated, then we cannot also put a price cap on an international commodity. that is not just sold based on decisions made in Nigeria, but based on decisions made internationally. So this is the way I am looking at it. But I think that Labour should also begin to think, much more out of the box. I see Labour as being, held in a time loop. Every time we discuss, salary increase, we discuss strikes and the rest. But there are many other things that Labour could put on table when they are negotiating with government. When they had the opportunity to meet with the highest level of government, I think there are issues that they should have put across. Some of these issues include tax rebates, for workers, other rebates for some other services, transport rebates, rebates for purchase of drugs at registered pharmacies, and issues like that. They should have also put across issues that affect the people directly.
All right.
Something like the multiple taxation.
Okay.
The multiple taxation that small business owners suffer. That should be discussed. The extortions that transporters suffer on the way.
Okay.
And they move
Dr.
from,
Sajoh.
maybe if you take just a basket of tomato from Kano to
Yes.
Ibadan, all of these things affect prices, affect cost of living, affect us all in one way or the other.
All right, Dr. Sajoh. Okay, I hear you, but a few things I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
If you're saying that Labour shouldn't have, organized Labour shouldn't have used the word betrayal, what would you suggest would be a better nomenclature? If they say that there was an agreement, they went to the negotiation table for months, and they came out with an agreement, and we all saw videos of the outcome where they were jubilating and singing for the president. And that was based on the fact that the president had assured them that if they accept the 62,000 naira as minimum wage, fuel price wouldn't go up. What is that if he reneges on the agreement? Is that not a sense of betrayal? Then the second part of that is, you're asking about going... Hold on a second. Let me just finish. So you're asking about going on to discuss other things. But the matters that were discussed, nothing has come out of it. So what is the point of going to discuss further these other issues if just a simple matter around wage, which is backed by law, isn't settled at the moment? And then when promises are made or agreements are reached, it's not honored by the federal government. What is the point of going back to the table to discuss what? To what extent, if nothing would be obeyed?
No, I think you're also getting it wrong. The truth is that when there is an agreement, the correct terminology is breach of agreement. And breach of agreement is actionable even in the court of law. So if there was an agreement, a signed agreement, not to do A, B, C, D, if any party breaches that agreement, you don't call it betrayal, you call it breach of agreement. And a breach of agreement is actionable, even in law. But put that aside. What I'm trying to say is that you cannot say that nothing was achieved. A new minimum wage of 70,000 naira was approved, and we are faced with implementation. Its lifespan is 3 years, and I must tell you that it has happened before. We had a 30,000 naira minimum wage for over 5 years. Some subnational entities did not implement. Now the onus on Labour is to ensure that this time around it is implemented. I can tell you very proudly that my state, Adamawa State, has started implementing, but with the start of the implementation in Adamawa State, we have seen new challenges, even in the implementation of the 70,000 naira. The mainstream civil servants are getting it, but those on special salaries, medical workers, judiciary workers, House of Assembly, Accountant General, and the rest are yet to have their consequential adjustments made.
Dr. Sajoh, the CNG bosses, what happened to that? I'm just saying that a number of things that were promised or agreed, Labour has called off the strike, but the federal government has not honored its own side of the agreement. And so when you're asking for other things, or let's keep talking to who? To what advantage? At what level? And then what would happen?
No. Let's understand one thing, that Labour also agreed that they will participate, they will be given some of the buses to run. I mean, and if they did not get a timeline, and there's no timeline on a signed agreement, then that does not constitute a breach. What I'm trying to say is that you don't walk out of a negotiation process without a signed agreement, a document that says, look, this is what we're going to do, and these are the timelines for doing this. And if you do not have this, and you just go about and talking about a breach of what?
Dr.
Now,
Sajoh.
We saw videos and... yes, sir.
Dr. Sajoh, sir, with due respect, a breach of agreement is also betrayal.
Yes,
so I don't even understand with the English we are speaking here. When you say you breach agreement, you also betrayed the agreement. Breach of agreement is betrayal. Dr. Abati,
betrayal of trust.
You have PhD long ago. Breach and betrayal, is it not the same? So I don't even understand it. That's why I had to ask Dr. Abati. You know, he has a PhD for many years. So I needed to understand, because you people are doctor. So I needed to understand. Breach and betrayal of trust is the same thing.
No.
Let's settle that. It's true. You can't argue that, sir. Breach of agreement is also betraying the essence of the agreement.
Hold on, sir.
Yes.
You breach an agreement that is in writing. Is there an agreement, a written agreement,
obviously,
that has been breached?
Obviously.
That's the question I'm asking.
Obviously, they have an agreement. They couldn't have come out and said they had signed the tripartite committee agreement. And secondly, you are discounting what Labour said. Dr.
Yes,
Sajoh, wait. Were you in the meeting?
Yes,
you in the meeting? Before you discount what Labour said, were you present in the meeting?
I was not in the meeting, but what I am saying is that Nigerians are entitled to see a copy of the agreement.
So how do you say
between Labour and employer is put in the public space?
How do you say Labour is not correct?
All I am saying is that
no. Let me ask you.
I see it.
No, Doctor.
No,
wait.
I am saying that yes, sir. Yes,
Doctor,
sir.
wait, please. How do you say Labour is not correct
yes, sir.
when you were
yes,
not
sir.
a member of that meeting? That's number one. You were not privy to the conversations in that meeting. So you have no right to say Labour doesn't say that he betrayed them.
I am not saying I have a right. I am saying I have not seen a written agreement, a signed agreement. That's what I'm saying.
Secondly, if you
do all the time,
if you want
in labor practice, you sign an agreement and you make it public.
Obviously, there is a signed...
An agreement is signed and made public.
Obviously, there is a signed agreement...
And it's made public?
...with many parties to it. If you want to get a copy, you can ask the Labour and other parties. There is a sign. Secondly, I also want to tell you that some of your assumptions here are wrong. The assumption you made that we are fully deregulated, it's not true. We are still paying subsidies. That's why we are having this conversation we are having today, as we speak. So your assumption, because we've deregulated the market, international forces take place. No. That's why you saw that the NNPC came out to start saying that we actually owe our international partners. Because if we are not paying subsidy any longer, NNPC is not supposed to burden us with how much they owe their international partners. People are supposed to willingly bring fuel into the market if it's an open, willing market, willing buyer, willing seller market. So that assumption, sir, with due respect, is wrong. I also talked about CNG. How do you trust in government, Dr. Sajoh?
It's not an assumption.
Hang on a minute, Dr. Sajoh.
Yes, sir. It's not an assumption. Yes, sir.
Do you have your facts that we are no longer paying subsidy? Give me your facts.
No, I'm not talking about... We're not talking about subsidy here. We're talking about the regulation of the downstream sector.
What is
Has it not been deregulated? Market forces determine the price.
And what is market forces determining the price? Is it not removal of subsidy? When you say market forces determine the price, is it not removing the unseen hand of government so that price will not be fixed?
I know that. I know. Exactly. I know that
so is it not removal of subsidy?
Two factors that are very necessary here. There are two factors here: energy availability and energy affordability. Do we have, do we have
Dr.
fuel available yes, sir?
Dr. Sajoh, it's not correct to say that we have complete deregulation in the downstream sector. That's the point that Rufai Hussaini is trying to point to draw your attention to.
Okay.
And then on the issue of agreements, not all agreements have to be written down. You know, without sounding pedantic, you know, there are agreements that are called contracts in law of contracts that are made uberimae fidei, that is, in good faith. You can reach an agreement in good faith, and you are bound by it. And if you don't observe it, you are still, you know, you'll still be accused of breaching an agreement, because in law there's a principle called pacta. Just hold on. I'm just providing a little education. There's something called pacta sunt servanda, which says agreements are sacrosanct. So whether the agreement was written or not, if an understanding was reached by that tripartite body, then an agreement is there. In any case, the 70,000 naira that the federal government offered, federal government has not paid it, and then we find ourselves in this situation. The point.
Exactly.
The point that commentators are making.
Thank you very much for the, yes.
Yeah, the point that commentators are making is that we are facing a storm of social unrest because Nigerians are hungry, they are angry. What will you advise President Tinubu to do to manage what looks like a problem that is already foretold?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the education. I don't know how much I'm supposed to pay for as school fees, but let's
you can fact
discuss
check me.
what you have just. No, let's look at it very well. I think what you're saying is to a large extent true, and an action, a positive action that will avert a crisis is absolutely necessary. And I think that the government, one of the things the government can do is to immediately begin to, find a way to ensure that the hardships are ameliorated. And that is an urgent thing. And one of them is to immediately begin to implement the new minimum wage with the consequential adjustment. At least that would ease the situation a little with the working population. But then there are other activities that should be done, including, of course, addressing tax issues, addressing productivity issues, addressing availability of foodstuff and others. And most importantly, of course, addressing security concerns across the country. And I think we need to do that very fast, and we do not have time. It's not like it has to be done in the next 2-3 months, but it has to be done as immediately as possible. So these are the things that the government should do at present, so that we can have some relief in the country.
All right, Dr. Sajoh, would you in any way align with organized labor's position that this increase should be reversed, bearing in mind what the agreement had been with the implementation of the new minimum wage, which hasn't been effected, 70,000 naira, and also all these recommendations you've made, the government has intervened. There's a joint tax committee headed by Mr. Taiwo Yedele, hoping that the recommendations from that committee will be taken forward. It hasn't yet been. Second part is when you talk about critical things like medicine, food, the government has announced a number of times suspension of tariffs on these items, which again haven't been implemented. So you see the challenge here is not a matter of announcements or policy directions. Implementation is critical. So whilst they're trying to put their house in order to implement, should the increase be reversed?
No, I want us to go back to the beginning of this conversation, and I'm still standing on my feet that the agreement that Labour said and government said that there was no such agreement can only be clarified if we have a written document to back that up. That I stand by.
Okay, agreement aside, agreement in light of the things I mentioned,
okay,
that implementation has been the challenge. So let's leave agreement.
Yeah.
You talk about recommendation that tax should be reviewed. There's a joint tax committee currently. You talk about healthcare challenges. It was announced that tariffs on critical healthcare medicals would be taken off. We got a report again that hasn't been implemented either. So there are policies being announced, no implementation or little adherence. But the people are being asked to pay. So what I'm asking, I really want it to be clear. What I'm asking is, whilst the government is putting its house in order to implement these great policies, should there be a reversal of the increase in the interim? And then when these implementations come into play, then we can then begin to talk about price increase.
Well, I would also want to say that whether there is a reversal or there is no reversal, that we must make sure also there is availability. Because sometimes when affordability overrides availability, you end up with something you cannot see. And when you cannot see, it encourages profiteering. People hide the product and sell it at a much higher prices than the one we're talking about today. So if there is going to be any reduction in price, it should not compromise availability, because the product has to be available for people to buy. And if the product is not available in the quantities that are required, then people will still have to buy it at an expensive rate.
Okay, so Dr. Sajoh,
I come from an area where I know how much we buy.
Okay, so Dr. Sajoh, you were talking about
fuel, even when it was fully subsidized.
Okay, so Dr. Sajoh,
we never
you were talking about
subsidized in my place.
So, Dr. Sajoh, you were talking about agreement. I'm going to give you one agreement, and because your initial premise was, Labour doesn't have a right to say they've been betrayed. And you were talking about agreement. I'll give you a very classical agreement government betrayed. The first time Labour went on strike, government promised, because the demands of Labour then was fix CNG or get the refineries working, and government promised that the Port Harcourt refinery was going to be working by December. President Tinubu promised. By December, they said the refinery was mechanically complete. Till today, it's not churned out any oil. In fact, NNPC has said we have to push the date of work for that refinery till I don't know when it's going to happen. That's a classical betrayal of agreements. That one was in public glare because President Tinubu said refineries will work by December.
But
last year it never worked. That's number one. Number two was also the case of NNPC, CNG gases.
Okay.
Today we have not seen, it was not the case of NNPC. It was President Tinubu that promised that, and President Tinubu, like you know, is the Minister of Petroleum, promised that refineries were going to work, and they never worked by December. CNG gases, buses that the government promised, till today is not as pervasive as they claim it is. So how do you believe somebody that betrays you too many times, that fools you too many times with all sorts of these shenanigans?
All right.
No, I think, I understand very well that the NNPC said the mechanical works of the Port Harcourt refinery had been completed, but that when they test run, they discovered that there are certain other things that needed to be done and that they are doing them. I believe President Tinubu spoke because he received a report from NNPC as at then, assuring him, because they are the technical arm of the process. Right. And I think it's unfortunate that it could lead to a level where the president will speak and then the thing would not happen. So that's but as for the CNG buses, like I said, the CNG buses were part of the recent discussions, and a timeline must have been set. We want to know what was the timeline given by the government to roll out the CNG buses. Are they being manufactured somewhere? Are they being ordered from somewhere? What is stolen? The thing we don't know. But that it was part of the discussion. Okay. So I am sure the discussion must have had some timelines.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Ibrahim Sajoh. Yeah. I'm sure you would agree that we can disagree on certain things. It was good having you this morning. Time for a short break now.
Okay, we can. And it's interesting that we agree and disagree.
Yes.
Because we are all talking of the same entity, Nigeria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.